Have you ever noticed how some people seem to maintain complete inner peace despite the chaos around them? They don't fight. They don't protest. They simply accept what is. And suddenly everything changes. The energy shifts. People start to wonder, to reconsider, to feel uncertain. Now imagine if you did the same. If you stopped resisting reality, if you chose acceptance instead of the constant struggle, stillness instead of reaction, what do you think would happen? That's where the truth lies. When you stop fighting against what cannot be changed emotionally, mentally, spiritually, the world around you transforms because people are used to seeing you battle against the inevitable, through your frustration, through your complaints, through your predictable suffering. But the day you choose to accept, the dynamic shifts. And those who thought they understood you realize they know absolutely nothing about who you truly are. If this message resonates with you, click the subscribe button and join our community as we explore the deeper wisdom of acceptance. When you accept what cannot be changed, who really gets disturbed? Who becomes frustrated? Who tries to pull you back into the struggle just to validate their own resistance? This reveals more about them than about you. And it mainly reveals how much your peace threatens their worldview without you even realizing it. You keep fighting to prove a point, to be understood, to change people who deep down were never interested in changing. And with every argument, every sleepless night, every moment of resistance against reality, you give away a piece of your vital energy. And at the end of the day, what's left? Exhaustion, bitterness, a heaviness you struggle to explain. But I'll tell you why. Because you are too invested in battling circumstances that don't depend on you. This video is not about resignation or passivity. It's about choosing freedom. It's about learning what ancient philosophers called wisdom, the process of distinguishing between what you can and cannot control. And this process begins when you understand that acceptance can be stronger than 1,000 arguments. That surrender when it comes from wisdom and not from defeat is an act of power. So I ask you now, looking directly at you, how long will you continue to be drained by resisting what already is? How long will you react like a victim every time life doesn't match your expectations? Maybe it's time to cut those chains, to accept, to become truly free. Because when you stop fighting reality, everything changes. You have been taught to always push back, to resist, to fight for what you want, to never give up even when the battle is clearly lost. Since childhood, you have been conditioned to believe that your worth lies in how hard you struggle against adversity. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you with this clarity. This excessive resistance is not strength. It is exhaustion. And as long as you continue to think that you need to control everything around you, fight every circumstance, change what cannot be changed, you will be frustrated, depleted, and eventually broken by the very reality you refuse to accept. Do you know why? Because fighting what cannot be changed makes you seem foolish. And everything that is foolish becomes a lesson. People start to see you as an example of what not to do, how not to live, and then leave you to your struggles. But you don't realize this because you are trapped in an illusion that battling everything will somehow make life bend to your will. But it doesn't work that way. The wisest philosophers spoke about acceptance. This surrender we practice to be at peace, content, liberated. And it is exactly this surrender that keeps you unnecessarily exhausted. You say you're fine when you are breaking. You push against immovable forces even when you are depleted. You argue, defend, and resist as if reality owes you something. But the truth is that the more you place yourself against the current of life, the more you are swept away by it. Being in constant resistance is a subtle form of self-destruction. It is a disguised way of seeking control, avoiding uncertainty, trying to shape a world that moves according to its own laws. But this resistance comes at a price. And the price is your serenity. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. It is your vital energy being consumed as if it were unlimited, when in fact it is precious, very limited. People who want you to keep fighting alongside them in fact do not want your peace. They want your companionship in suffering, validation, shared frustration, confirmation that resistance is justified. But when you change, when you accept what is, when you refuse to engage in pointless battles, those same people get uncomfortable, question you, say you have given up. It's not because you failed. It's because you stopped reinforcing their struggle. And here's the most painful truth. The more you resist, the more suffering you create for yourself. Because what cannot be changed becomes your emotional prison. No one finds freedom fighting against walls that won't move. No one finds peace by denying what already exists. So now pause and reflect. What truly deserves your energy? What deserves your attention, your effort, your resistance? Or better yet, what deserves your acceptance? But before answering that, we need to understand one essential thing. Why do we resist so much? Why do we fight against reality so persistently? What is behind this almost automatic desire to control, change, and deny what is? The answer lies in what philosophers call ego attachment. And that is what we will talk about in the next part. Because your peace is all you have. And if you don't learn to protect it through acceptance, your resistance will consume you. Carl Jung did not see the human mind as a battleground where we must constantly fight against reality. For him, our psyche is like an energy system, and every resistance, denial, and struggle consumes a part of that energy. The question is, are you choosing where your energy goes, or are you wasting it fighting what cannot be changed? Every time you resist impulsively, you are depleting your inner resources. When you argue against a truth that won't change, when you deny a reality that has already manifested, when you engage in futile struggles, when you try to control what is beyond your influence, you are spending your inner strength on what does not serve you. And the wisest teachers were clear, that which you resist persists. The more you fight against it, the stronger it becomes in your life. People who live emotionally exhausted are not weak. They are misdirected. And do you know what happens to someone who lives in constant resistance? They become bitter. And when you are bitter, you become blind to possibilities. Negative, opportunistic, and emotionally reactive people can sense this. They notice that you do not know how to conserve your energy, that you fight against everything, that you're always trying to control the uncontrollable, and they take advantage of it. Ancient wisdom teaches that a healthy mind is one that knows how to direct energy wisely. This means knowing how to accept without resignation, knowing how to surrender without feeling defeated, knowing how to observe before reacting. Because true power is not in resistance. It is in choosing what deserves your energy. And this is only possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize what you can and cannot change. How many times have you lost peace over circumstances you couldn't alter? How many times have you spent days fighting against realities that were already fixed, trying to undo what was done, or trying to understand why life didn't go according to your plan? This is energy being wasted without purpose. You are keeping alive struggles that should have been released long ago and feeding frustrations that only exist because you insist on denying what is. Inner peace is like a protective field. When well maintained, it creates resilience. You face challenges with equanimity and inspire respect without desperate efforts. But when poorly managed, you become reactive, fragile, exhausted, and life has no mercy for those who constantly resist what cannot be changed. Therefore, start observing your own patterns. What makes you fight unnecessarily? What makes you lose your center? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, and that is where you need to work. Not to become indifferent or passive, but to be discerning, to be sovereign over your responses. And here comes one of the greatest revelations from wisdom traditions. When you conserve your energy through acceptance, you break the cycle of suffering that keeps you trapped. And that disturbs many people because now we are entering a profound territory, that of unconscious resistance. In the next part, we will explore how attachment to outcomes drains your energy and why your acceptance completely transforms these dynamics. Get ready to look into the heart of what has always exhausted you without you realizing it. You think you are in control. You believe your resistance is a conscious choice. But the truth is deeper. Most of your struggles against reality are programmed responses. And those who understand this manipulate you easily. People caught in the same pattern don't need to convince you, pressure you, or force situations. They just trigger the resistance you've developed and you react predictably. Philosophers called this attachment, the psychological mechanism through which people cling to specific outcomes and fight against whatever doesn't match their expectations. But there is another side to this phenomenon that few notice. While others reinforce your resistance, you also become trapped in these shared patterns. And the more emotionally invested you are in fighting reality, the more you become caught in cycles of pointless struggle. You know that friend who only calls to complain about unchangeable circumstances, that family member who constantly fights the same battles, that colleague who refuses to accept workplace realities? None of this is accidental. They are not relating to you. They are relating to the validation you provide for their resistance. And why do you provide it? Because you are afraid of seeming callous, afraid of not being supportive, afraid of being judged for your peace. The most effective trap doesn't happen through force. It happens in the silence of shared suffering. When you feel that you must join others in their struggles, when you believe you need to resist alongside them, need to fight, need to deny reality, even when it destroys your peace inside. And here is the central point. Those caught in resistance don't need to convince you. They just need you to keep fighting alongside them. But when you stop resisting, the pattern breaks. When you start accepting, responding with equanimity, choosing peace instead of battle, the shared illusion begins to crumble. The expectations they placed on you fall away. And this leaves people unsettled because they no longer recognize you. And worse, now they are forced to question their own resistance. And not everyone is prepared for that. Your acceptance is threatening because it forces others to confront their own unnecessary struggles. The peace you embody reveals the internal chaos they don't want to acknowledge. And then comes the criticism, the accusations, the emotional pressure. Not because you are wrong, but because you stopped validating their approach to life. Wisdom traditions teach, we do not become enlightened by imagining states of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you accept reality, when you stop feeding the cycle, the other's attachments begin to surface. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as a companion in suffering. But what about you? Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, questioned, or even criticized for protecting your peace? Are you ready to endure the solitude that comes after choosing acceptance? Because it is precisely in that solitude that a new kind of freedom is born. And that is what we will talk about now that I end the next part. You will understand why acceptance can be the most liberating power of the human spirit and how it completely changes the relationship between you and reality. The modern world is chaotic. Everyone wants to control, wants to force outcomes, wants to win impossible battles and deny uncomfortable truths, even if it costs them their own peace. But there is a power that few know and even fewer master. The power of acceptance. Not the acceptance of resignation or defeat, but conscious, deliberate, profoundly lucid acceptance. The kind of acceptance that is not weakness but amplified strength. Ancient philosophers saw acceptance not as giving up but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop resisting, you begin to see clearly. And by seeing clearly, you notice patterns that previously went unnoticed. Emotional traps, unnecessary struggles, cycles of self-torture. Acceptance allows for wisdom. And wisdom is threatening for those who live in constant battle. Have you noticed how some people become uncomfortable when you don't join their resistance? When you don't fight alongside them, when you simply accept what cannot be changed? It's not because they care about your growth. It's because your peace challenges their narrative. While you resist, you are still caught in the game. But when you accept, you change the rules. And that unsettles anyone who thrives on shared struggle. True acceptance is not passive resignation. It is mastery over one's own energy. It is the refusal to be drained by futile battles. It is the conscious choice not to engage in struggles that are not worth your peace. Philosophers taught that self-realization, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires this discernment because only in acceptance can you hear yourself without the noise of pointless resistance. But don't be deceived. Acceptance has a cost. It will distance you from people who only valued you for sharing their struggles. It will make you unrecognizable to those who only saw you through their own patterns. It will make you seem detached, different, even cold. But all of this is a reaction from those who never wanted to see your freedom, only your companionship in suffering. And here is the difficult truth. The more you evolve, the more selective you become with your battles. Because you understand that each struggle is an energetic investment and not every circumstance deserves your resistance. Sometimes acceptance is not surrender. It is wisdom. It is the approach of those who no longer need to fight against every reality they face. Acceptance is uncomfortable because it forces the other to deal with their own attachments, with their own internal resistance. And this discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of yours could reveal. You don't need to justify your peace. It justifies itself. And those who feel threatened by it reveal how much they depended on your shared struggle to validate their own resistance. But the most powerful acceptance is not the one that disturbs others. It is the acceptance that reconstructs you from within. The acceptance that connects you to something beyond external validation. It is in this internal space free from unnecessary battles that you begin to recover your vital energy, to reconnect with your essence. And this is precisely what we will talk about in the next part. Because it's not enough to just understand acceptance intellectually. You need to relearn how to embrace reality as it is, to choose where your energy goes, where it stays, and most importantly, where it should never be wasted. It's time to learn to be selective with your own peace. If you're in the process of reclaiming your tranquility and choosing acceptance, you'll find real value in my book, Beyond Resistance. It breaks down the most important philosophical ideas and gives you tools to protect your energy, accept what cannot be changed, and reconnect with your true nature. Link is in the pinned comment. That it's no use understanding all of this intellectually if in practice you continue fighting what cannot be changed, engaging in pointless arguments, dwelling on past injustices, and maintaining battles that only exist out of habit. Awareness without application is just another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective with your struggles. And this requires emotional discipline. Conscious acceptance is not about being passive, indifferent, or resigned. It's about no longer exhausting yourself fighting against every reality that doesn't match your expectations. It's about taking control of your own energy, your own peace, your own freedom. And this starts with small actions. Not reacting immediately to provocations. Breathing before responding. Walking away from pointless debates before being dragged into chaos. Accepting limitations without bitterness. Saying this is beyond my control. Saying I choose not to fight this. Saying I accept what is. But here's the most important part. You don't need to justify your acceptance. You don't need to explain your peace. You owe nothing to anyone but yourself. And this for many people is unforgivable because when you refuse to join their resistance, you take away their power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you are always the fellow warrior, struggling companion, resistance partner. Wisdom traditions understood that every process of liberation goes through solitude, but not an isolating solitude, a restorative solitude, a time of inner peace where you relearn to align with reality without the world's interference. Where you rebuild your relationship with life, not based on control and resistance, but from acceptance and flow. Want to know a reliable indicator of your evolution? Observe who becomes uncomfortable around you when you become more accepting. Observe who tries to pull you back into struggle when you stop resisting. Observe who accuses you of giving up when you finally start to protect your peace. These are not signs that you are failing. They are proof that you have begun to free yourself. Practicing acceptance is challenging at first. You will feel guilty. You will think you are being weak. You will hear that you are being too passive, but this is part of the transformation process. You have spent your life being conditioned to fight against reality. It's natural that change causes discomfort, not only in you, but in everyone who found company in your resistance. Conscious acceptance is the foundation of true freedom. When you say no to pointless struggles, you are saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from battles that cannot be won, you are reaffirming that your peace is worth more than any false victory. And when you stop explaining your acceptance, you begin to inspire others, even if it's only a few. But not everyone is ready for this type of wisdom because your peaceful acceptance will expose attachments they do not want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your shared resistance to feel validated. And it is at this moment that the separation comes. And with the separation comes the uncertainty, the solitude, the questioning, the feeling that you are losing something when in fact you are just liberating yourself. But what happens after that? What comes after the acceptance? What is born from the peace? In the last part, we will talk about this, about the rebirth that only happens when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to stand alone, and to become whole through acceptance. It's time to understand why the solitude of the wise is the path to true liberation. When you stop resisting what cannot be changed, something profound begins to happen. First comes the stillness. An unfamiliar stillness that seems strange within you. You question if you're doing the right thing, if you are being too passive, if you are missing opportunities by not fighting harder. But gradually this stillness transforms. It begins to heal, to restore, to nourish. And then comes clarity. But not the clarity of strategic planning. It is the clarity of perfect discernment, your natural wisdom. The clarity of one who no longer wastes energy on futile battles. And in that space where there was once struggle, serenity enters. Where there was once exhaustion, vitality enters. Where there was once frustration, a new kind of power enters. The power of being at peace within yourself. Ancient philosophers said that the process of wisdom, becoming who you truly are, requires you to step back from collective struggles, that you detach from unnecessary battles, that you walk your own path for a while. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to embrace acceptance. You are not escaping reality. You are aligning with it. It is at this point that you stop being a victim and become a creator. You cease to be drained by circumstances and begin to shape your experience from within. The people who feel uncomfortable with your acceptance, they reveal that they never valued your well-being. They valued your companionship in suffering. And now that you no longer participate, they don't know how to relate to you. And that is liberating. You will lose fellow warriors. But you will find your peace. You will distance yourself from battles. But you will reconnect with your essence. You will become misunderstood. But finally, you will begin to be respected. Because when you are no longer available for pointless struggle, you become valuable, inspiring, unforgettable. And don't be mistaken. This is a rebirth. A new beginning, the start of a life where you are no longer available for shared suffering, for validation of resistance, for battles disguised as necessities. Now you only accept what aligns with your peace, with your truth, with your wholeness. And if you have come this far, it's because a part of you is already prepared for this new path. A part of you has already understood that belonging means nothing if for that you have to abandon your peace. And that true wisdom begins when you choose acceptance. Even if it means standing alone for a while. When you stop resisting what cannot be changed, something profound begins to happen. First comes the stillness. An unfamiliar stillness that seems strange within you. You question if you're doing the right thing, if you are being too passive, if you are missing opportunities by not fighting harder. But gradually this stillness transforms. It begins to heal, to restore, to nourish. And then comes clarity. But not the clarity of strategic planning. It is the clarity of perfect discernment, your natural wisdom. The clarity of one who no longer wastes energy on futile battles. And in that space where there was once struggle, serenity enters. Where there was once exhaustion, vitality enters. Where there was once frustration, a new kind of power enters. The power of being at peace within yourself. Ancient philosophers said that the process of wisdom, becoming who you truly are, requires you to step back from collective struggles, that you detach from unnecessary battles, that you walk your own path for a while. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to embrace acceptance. You are not escaping reality. You are aligning with it. It is at this point that you stop being a victim and become a creator. You cease to be drained by circumstances and begin to shape your experience from within. This transition isn't immediate. It unfolds gradually as your relationship with reality shifts. Where once you saw obstacles, you now see situations. Where once you felt opposition, you now sense opportunity. This isn't positive thinking, it's clear seeing. The reality hasn't changed, but your perception has transformed completely. Most people spend their entire lives in conflict with what already exists. They resist aging, they fight against natural cycles. They oppose inevitable changes, they struggle against their own nature. And in this constant battle, they miss the profound power that comes from acceptance. Imagine the energy you would reclaim if you stopped fighting what cannot be altered. Imagine the clarity you would access if your mind wasn't clouded by resistance. Imagine the peace you would embody if you allowed life to flow through you rather than against you. The greatest paradox of acceptance is that it doesn't lead to passivity as many fear. Instead, it creates the foundation for meaningful action. When you stop exhausting yourself against immovable walls, you find the doors that were always open. When you release the need to control everything, you discover what you can genuinely influence. When you surrender the battles that cannot be won, you find the victories that are possible. The people who feel uncomfortable with your acceptance, they reveal that they never valued your well-being. They valued your companionship in suffering. And now that you no longer participate, they don't know how to relate to you. And that is liberating. You will lose fellow warriors, but you will find your peace. You will distance yourself from battles, but you will reconnect with your essence. You will become misunderstood, but finally, you will begin to be respected. This journey of acceptance transforms not just your inner landscape but your outer relationships too. Notice how your presence changes in rooms where you once felt tension. Observe how conversations shift when you no longer engage in pointless debate. Feel how your energy expands when you stop depleting it through resistance. The people who truly matter will be drawn to this new quality in you, not because you're fighting alongside them, but because you're standing in your truth. Because when you are no longer available for pointless struggle, you become valuable, inspiring, unforgettable. You become a living demonstration of another way to be. In a world addicted to resistance, your acceptance shines like a beacon. In communities trapped in shared suffering, your peace creates a new possibility. Among people exhausted by fighting reality, your alignment offers hope. And don't be mistaken. This is a rebirth, a new beginning, the start of a life where you are no longer available for shared suffering, for validation of resistance, for battles disguised as necessities. Now you only accept what aligns with your peace, with your truth, with your wholeness. This doesn't mean you never take action or stand against injustice. It means you choose your battles with profound wisdom, investing your energy where it can create genuine change, not where it will be endlessly consumed. The greatest teachers throughout history understood this balance. They knew when to act and when to accept. They recognized what could be changed and what required surrender. They demonstrated that true power isn't in constant resistance but in perfect discernment. And this wisdom is available to you right now. It begins with a single moment of acceptance. A single breath where you stop fighting what is. A single decision to release what cannot be changed. And if you have come this far, it's because a part of you is already prepared for this new path. A part of you has already understood that belonging means nothing if for that you have to abandon your peace. And that true wisdom begins when you choose acceptance. Even if it means standing alone for a while. Even if it means being misunderstood by those still caught in resistance. Even if it means letting go of identities built around struggle. Each time you choose acceptance over unnecessary resistance, you create space for new possibilities. Each moment you release the fight against reality, you invite deeper wisdom. Each instance you surrender what cannot be changed, you reclaim your power over what can be transformed. This is the art of living, not in opposition to life but in harmony with it. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, questioned, or even criticized in the name of your inner peace? Are you willing to accept what cannot be changed? If this message touched you, if it resonated, write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let's see how many here are ready for this transformation. How many are prepared to step into the freedom that comes from acceptance? How many are willing to discover what lies beyond resistance? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. The wisdom we're exploring together is just beginning to unfold. The next video builds on these concepts and reveals even deeper truths about living in alignment with reality. It's more important than you can imagine, a doorway to the freedom you've always sought. See you there.